with the Good Contractor Podcast. I was just commenting that Luke, he's got a fresh haircut. He looks tan, which means he's been golfing more than he's been working. Aha. That is the sign of a good leader. That's right. And we have another CEO joining us today. Now, my question is, since now there's like a CEO and a CEO, and I'm not a CEO, do I just do I get smaller in the background? Or, I mean, for those listening on audio, this is not going to really make any sense, but how do I diminish myself given my lower station in life between you?
You should see this as an opportunity to shut up, just to close it down.
See this as an opportunity to stop talking. That would be great.
The only silent podcast out there. We both stare at each other.
We've been talking about having a guest co-host, someone like Mickey or Jamie, and I think this is the perfect opportunity. I'm just going to sign off and we'll let them come in now. They don't know that, so they might be a little ill-prepared. Who knows? We are the double digits now. I misspoke when we talked to Licio Tamberlini, and that's why no one heard it in the episode. I edited that out, but I thought he was episode number 10. Since then, obviously, we've recorded a few. We're actually at episode number 11. How about that? We are rolling right along, season 1. I am so excited to have David Peters joining us. Like I said, the founder and CEO of Construction Clock. And I have to lead off with this. I know, David, that you and Luke have talked, but I've had those moments where I wanted to have a guest on based on a conversation I've had, or I watched a video. The coolest thing I heard was I was at IBS this year in Las Vegas. And David was at his booth for Construction Clock, and Isaac from our team said, "Hey, I want you to meet David." And I was like, "Great." So we were kind of standing there waiting for David to finish. And the coolest thing that David said to this guy was, "Hey, listen, man, I'm behind this 100%. I have every penny I have tied up in this. I believe in it that much." And the second he said that, I looked at Isaac, I go, "Can we have David on the podcast? Because that's exactly the type of story that I want to hear." So I'll let David get into all that. But first and foremost, David, how are you? And thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really great to see you again, John. Me and Luke have talked a couple of times in the past year and a half, and really, really glad to be on the podcast today.
So tell me a little bit about, let's go to the very beginning, your pre-Construction Clock, pre all that. How did you get into the trades? You spent a lot of time, obviously, in construction before Construction Clock. So talk about kind of your beginnings.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into the trades at first. I was 16 years old, and my dad said, "We're building a house, and you're the sweat equity portion of the house build." So I remember us building my parents' house based on a book that we bought, Canadian wood frame house construction. We're up here in Canada, and so I basically followed this book from the foundation to the framing. Everything was, for the first time ever, for me and for my dad. And at the end of that house, we had made a ton of mistakes, and we had both learned a ton. And I think it took us about 2 years, every evening and every weekend. In that time, I ended up leaving high school. And then when I was 18, I started working concrete. And basically, it was the best money I could make. I could either work on a farm or in a factory, or I could work construction. I'd rather work outside than inside of a factory. So
hold on, even in Canada? You want to work outside in Canada? That's crazy talk.
Yeah. Well,
you got 7.5 days over the course of a summer that you can pour concrete.
But those 7.5 days are glorious. So
yeah, they're beautiful.
Exactly right.
Yeah. I was talking to someone that lives in Minnesota, which is like American Canada, and they were saying that you get in month, summer's like a month shorter on each side. But then it's even that much better. The time in between where it really is summer is just perfect. And I feel like that's the Canada way. But remind me, where are you in Canada?
Yeah, so I'm in Winnipeg, which is about 6 hours north of Minneapolis. And so we're like the middle of North America. If you looked at a map of North America, we're like dead center of that. And it's cold. It's very cold in the winter. Construction very much slows down in the winter. So January and February, we typically are not working, and then we work a lot of hours in the summer. We get really long days in the summer, so we work a lot of hours. And so from the time I was 18 till the time I was about 35 or 36, we would work a lot from kind of March 1st till Christmas. And then you take a couple months off because it's just unbearable. It's like minus 40 Celsius, which is like, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's very cold. So
it's really cold. Yeah. It's cold enough that you don't even need to do the whatever, the like conversion. You're like, yeah, it's like, what's negative 140 in Kelvin? Who cares? Like, you're frozen. You're dead.
How
you're
cold
dead
is
on
it?
the prairie.
It's too cold. Okay, very good. So I was going to say you do concrete. So talk to me.
Did concrete. Is that where you got into it? Like, is that the first business you started?
That was the first trade I got into. And I basically, I just wanted to work and I wanted to make money. And so it was the first job I got. So 2 years of concrete every day, kind of digging around in the mud. You're in a hole 10 feet below surface and you're setting up forms. I did that, and then I ended up doing grain bins. It was farm construction, so we set up these big grain elevators, and I did that for a year. And then I just kind of started being a renovation contractor after that. So we were framing homes and renovating cottages and kind of like everything in between. I got really good at. I was average at everything. I wasn't really good at anything, but I was average at everything.
Hey, that'll get you there. Hold on. No, but let me pause you. What is a cottage? Like, I mean, I picture like an English cottage on the countryside. Like, is there a certain design that is a cottage, or is it just what we would call a cabin?
Yeah, it's just
roughly speaking.
It's our version of a cabin. Anything's a cottage that's like out by the lake or out in the bush somewhere.
Yeah, that's not like maybe the full home that you would always live in or something, but it's like, okay. So that's a cottage. I was just making sure. I didn't know if you were doing like the straw thatch roofs and like hobbits were living there. If
you're pooping in the bush, you're probably in a cottage.
Okay.
That's typically, that's when you know you're in a cottage.
David, that sounds like a t-shirt to me, buddy. Let's get on this and let's get this made, okay? This is good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So talk about this starting at 18, concrete, doing all this up until, can you tell me the moment when you can maybe pre-transition to before? Let's talk about before construction clock. But when did you say, I'm getting out of that business? Was it one of those like, I've done really well, I'm taking a break, what's my next direction? Is it, I didn't want to do it anymore? Like, where was that before construction clock?
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was getting closer to the end when I didn't love it like previous seasons. I had one season where I was doing the entire outside of a beautiful home, and it was a real painful job. It kept raining, and it ended up taking like twice as long as we wanted it to. And when I finished that job, the homeowners were super happy, and I pulled my truck and trailer out of there for the last time, and I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and I'm seeing this beautiful job, and I just like I wasn't happy like I was on previous jobs because I didn't feel like my heart was in it as much. And I mean, I'd been doing it for 16 or 17 years at that point, and my back was I'm a tall guy, so my back had taken a beating, and I just didn't feel like it was everything I want to do anymore. So that was kind of like the last season for me. Is I'm going to finish out this year. And I told my employees that summer, I said, this is going to be my last season, and I'm going to pass it along to you guys. And that's what I did.
Wow. What was that like? What was the reception like when you told them the news? And I guess twofold, what was the reception like when you told them the news and that you were passing it to them and kind of handing over the torch?
Yeah. I think if I had specialized in a business, there would be something to sell. But since we kind of did everything, there was no goodwill built into the business. I thought my employees are at that point where they could probably continue this thing on. And so when I told them, they were kind of freaked out because I was very good at selling work, estimating. I had all the contacts. And so when I told them that I was hanging it up, I spent the next 3 or 4 months basically getting them the accounts at the supply houses and introducing them to how to estimate things. So it was a pretty good transition. It was also during COVID or at the end of COVID. So anybody with a hammer was making money in construction at that time. It was, I don't know how it was in the US, but in Canada,
it was like that.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Correct.
So they started at the best time. It was the best time for me to pass it off. And it was also scary because I was leaving something that it was the only thing I knew in my entire life was running a little construction business. And I was quitting that to start something that I had no idea what I was getting into.
How were you getting jobs? Like you said, you're pretty good at sales. Like you kind of had the contacts. Like how were you usually getting the next job that you were doing?
I would say some of it came from word of mouth, but the majority of my work was on my Instagram, and I could see that my work was getting shared with each other. And then when I got a call, it was usually because somebody saw our work on Instagram. And because we're in Canada, so there's all these little niches. So we kind of worked cottage country, cabin country, in Northwestern Ontario. So people noticed when you were doing jobs out there. And so that was the validation they needed. They would reach out. We would quote something. It was never a problem for us to fill up our year with work. It was more, especially during COVID, it was a matter of like getting material and getting the labor to do it. Getting the work was never the issue, but typically Instagram is how people would see our work and then learn about us.
How much, David, did you look back on? Because I think what's cool about this, before we get to the transition of, your creation, but how much did you look back on doing this with your dad? And you said, I won't forget this. You said, we did it out of a book and we made some mistakes. When you're driving away and you see that in the rearview mirror, how much did all that flashback, not just the memories of how you started, not just doing it with your dad, not just the mistakes, but how far you've come? That had to be a cool moment, even though you were leaving, to kind of tie all that together.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you that I had this moment where everything flashed back in my life. I wish I would stop and like appreciate how far I've come. And I feel like I don't do that enough. And I think as tradespeople, we're always looking at getting this job done and getting the next job started, that we actually never really stop and appreciate how far we've come. And we should do that more. I wish I could say I did it, but I didn't do that. I was anxious about getting the next thing going, and that would be something I would do differently for sure. So now you're going to this. You've passed on the torch. How long was it between then? When did the idea hit you, or were you already thinking about this idea for Construction Clock? And how did you get to that, at least in the beginning phases of, hey, this is something I want to do, now I got to figure out how to do it? It wasn't like a light bulb moment for Construction Clock. What I knew is there is all these pain points in the construction industry, and that some of them can be solved using technology. And like, these phones now are so incredible. I was like, there's got to be more that we can do. At that time, I didn't know about Company Cam, but I think that you guys are a great example of solving a very large pain point in the construction industry. And so I basically sat down at a desk and I started writing down all the pain points I had as a small contractor, because I knew there was probably about 1 million other contractors, like quite literally 1 million other contractors in the US and Canada that are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. And it probably took 3 to 4 months to iron out like that it was going to be an automatic time tracking solution that I was going to build.
Yeah, what I think is cool is technology also. I was having a conversation this morning doing a video edit of a previous interview we did. And the conversation that I was having with Mickey Parks on our team was that there are so many threads that are the same. Like we'll hear a contractor over here in this part of the United States to one in Canada to one over here. They're working in 3 completely different trades, but they're in the trades. And Luke and I were talking to them on 3 different occasions at different points of 2024. And they all had differences. And then they had these similar threads that all worked through. And so one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast was also to connect those things beyond just, hey, here's how to get rich quick, but more like here are really important things that are happening to everybody working in this space, regardless of the specific trade. And maybe it's not communicated enough, or maybe they're not connected to each other enough to say, hey, you're going through that same crap too, even though you're doing this and I'm doing this. Yeah, the same thing. We were talking about, we had multiple people bring up, man, some people don't trust me because I have too many 5-star reviews. And I was like, do you know how many people brought that up talking to Luke and I? It wasn't like we led the witness or anything. It wasn't like, hey, talk about reviews, but it came up. And I thought there's a great example of something that somebody could be in plumbing or HVAC or roofing or siding or restoration or whatever. And they could all have that same similar thread problem. So I think like you said, I think technology helps solve the pain points. It also, I think, is really cool because it's allowing us to do what we're doing right here. And that is connecting with somebody that may have been exactly in your position. Like, my back is killing me. I can't do this anymore. Yeah. I want to find something different to do. And I think that's what's even the coolest part about just doing a podcast, is having that connectivity. So
agreed. And I think that we take it for granted how interconnected this construction industry can be now. You used to only go to one trade show a year to meet all the people and meet all these faces. And now I can have ongoing relationships with hundreds of people just like you guys, and all of our customers, who some of them are also your customers, and they've heard about us through you guys. And there's never a better time to be in the trades than right now. And technology is definitely fixing some of these challenges.
David, if I asked someone that knew you in high school whether you were going to run a tech company in the future, what would they have said?
Yeah, definitely not.
I was like, whoa, you're taking this a different direction. Totally.
No, I would have assumed that I'm working for somebody else the rest of my life, and I'm job security, married, 6 kids, just like my parents did.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm the only one in my family that didn't get married and doesn't have kids, and it's I'm the black sheep of the family. So definitely wouldn't have owned a tech company if you asked somebody in high school.
Like, that wasn't the track you're on. That's fun. I mean, because I would the same way. Like, I never coded or anything, and I think everyone knew I was a genius, but they didn't know. I always like passing that off and seeing. I always know John's going to stop me, but seeing who stops me. Arrogant. That was the word they were using.
Yes,
that's the one.
There it is.
I get that confused.
And that's the same one we used during the meeting we had last week. So yeah, same thing.
You got it. But how much more technological the world's gotten, to the point that guys that were, literally swinging hammers 4 years ago, for me, call it 10 years ago, because we've just been at this a little longer, but that it's really cool to me that even more importantly than knowing how to code, knowing how to make an app, knowing all the things that you do, someone has to know if you want to build any technology. But more important than that is knowing the customer, knowing the problem, having that experience. And I'm sure if you had all of the above, you might be even better. But I'm curious, when you you thought you wanted to do something, and you said like a time tracking software. Like, what made you think that you could go build software? Like, how did you come to the opinion that like, oh yeah, I don't write code, I don't know anything, I'm a total moron, but sorry, I know David well enough. Well, even if I didn't, I'd probably do this, but I definitely know David.
I feel
well
like this
enough.
is just you describing yourself and not David. So
Exactly.
let's let David, describe himself.
This is international projection. But like, when did you like get that sort of conviction or that belief that like, oh, I could do this?
So I think the good thing about being a general carpenter or general construction worker is that we got ourselves into trouble all the time. So you would start opening up walls and you're out in the middle of nowhere. There is no plumbers to call. There's no electricians. You're figuring it out. And I think enough of that creates you've gotten yourself out of so many messes and the customer hasn't even realized that you got yourself into a mess. And then when you go into, I'm going to build an app. Well, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, but there's somebody in the world and likely in my city that knows how to do this. I'm a domain expert. They're really good at developing. And the rest between here and the app launching on the App Store, we will figure out. And I think it comes from problem solving in construction. If I had picked a specific trade and I became a master of that trade and that's all I did every day, and I didn't, after a while you get really good at your job and they're problem solving, but there's only problem solving within that trade. But we got ourselves into so many situations where I was like, I have no idea. And you start doing internet research just to figure out how you're supposed to fix something. That's what I needed to get to a point where I was like, I can build an app. I have no experience, but I'll hire somebody that knows.
Yeah, the experience of problem solving, because it really does kind of all boil down to that. Like, you got to have, like you said, first problem, I don't know how to build an app. Someone does, problem solved. Or, at least conceptually solved. Now you got to go find that person or the team, the company, you name it. Yeah. But that to me, that's what I like about, I'll say, entrepreneurship in general, especially in kind of like in tech, or like having a product like an app, is that like there are so many problems that the solutions are like very open-ended. It's not like, oh, this is always what happens and then you always do this and you could just go read a book about it. And there's like best practices and like good ways of thinking, like there's plenty of research you can do, blogs you can read, people you can listen to that will help you think about how to solve the problems that are in front of you. But like everyone has this problem in any business of no one knows who we are, or at least when you start a business, no one knows who we are, no one cares. And we have to probably first build the thing to solve the problem, get this in front of people, explain to them how it works, get them to try it. And sometimes that's harder than others. Like for us, this is a big kick we're on, is like, as far as our data shows, 10% of the people that say that they want to use Company Camp, that sign up for a free trial, actually try it. Like, do the sort of bare minimum of what could be considered using it as if they were using it at their company. Like the bare minimum, 10%. And that 10% converts, overwhelmingly, they end up becoming customers. Like when they try it, it works for them. How do we get more people to actually try it? That's really hard. For us, it's pretty low barriers. Like camera app, you open it up, you start taking pictures, they're organized, whatever. I know for you, it's a little trickier. And this is sort of a little more in the weeds, but whatever. It's interesting to me. And this is my podcast, no matter what John says. Don't listen to John. That when you're starting something like Construction Clock, which I love, and I don't know if you've adopted my slogan yet, but it's like the app you're not supposed to use, or the app you don't. I don't know. That's got to become a thing. The point is, there's a little more setup. Like it's not heavy, but like you've got to get it on your on employees' phones. You've got to do some of the like just the basic permissions and kind of assuring people.
Yeah.
Like, when you went from, hey, we're building this app, we've got to do time tracking. Was there any like people that you followed or any like moments that you remember where you like learned a thing that now you're like, of course, that kind of in hindsight is obvious. But when you come from construction and you go into building an app, like you know that you can figure it out, but you also don't actually know how to do anything. And I'm wondering about some of those. What were some of those moments, and what were like some of the sort of challenges? Maybe it's the one I said, or just the general challenges that now you're like, oh yeah, I could do that again pretty easily, but that was actually really hard.
Yeah, you have no idea what you're doing at the beginning. And I think the biggest thing I got really comfortable with, not in the moment, but now I'm really comfortable with, just really screwing up all the time, but testing. And I remember coming into your office and you giving me like 1 hour, you had no idea who I was. And I just took a look around and I saw everything you guys were doing. And I was like, man, they've got something figured out. You guys didn't get there on accident, but you guys also tested like crazy. And for us, I went back to my team and I said, guys, we got to start testing more. Like we always think that we know how to do everything. And then when you actually do it, nobody actually cares. I would walk up, this is not scalable, but at the beginning I would walk onto job sites and say, please use this app for free. If you do not like it, I'll give you $100. And what that did, I never actually nobody ever asked for $100. What that did is it opened a lot of doors to get that first group of customers in. And then they started telling you all the things that sucked about the app. And then what you realize is a lot more things suck about your app than you think that actually does.
That suck. Yeah. That never ends. We've been doing this for a decade. And I use this our app periodically, and I'm like, why? The ongoing mission of make this app suck less is a pretty good motto.
But one thing I would definitely say is that is just so easy for me to understand now that was hard is you got to talk to your customers all day, every day at the start and figure out why they're not using your product. And if they are using your product, what's pissing them off. And that was so hard for me to learn at the beginning because I wanted everyone to love it the way I loved it. And you're almost scared to talk to your customers because what if they say something negative? Now it's so obvious. Like you just, all you're going to do is hear all the ways that you should be improving it and getting really comfortable with that. I would do that a lot differently if I could do it over again.
I'll brag on you two guys for a second. What I think is cool also about being in this is that I came from a different point of technology where I was working for a startup doing online sports message boards that got purchased by behemoths like Yahoo and Verizon. And I was in those ecosystems. And one of my favorite quotes that a tech journalist that I follow for many years, Kara Swisher, said, but I don't think she originated it. She said somebody else said it, but she said at that period of time, specifically in the 2000s and really even the 2010s, she said, there was a lot of really smart people in Silicon Valley working on really stupid crap. And one of the things was that I noticed at the time that I was out there quite often and meeting with people and companies beyond the ones I was working for. These were just things that I had seen was a lot of the stuff you guys are talking about, low overhead, trying to stay as lean as possible, test a bunch, talk to your customers constantly, really be on the same level as them and solve problems that people actually have was the antithesis of what I saw in that era and that part of the world and what they were working on. It was more like ramp it up as fast as possible. It's a problem because we say it's a problem and we're going to solve it. And then we'll see if we can offload this thing before the interest rates go up and the free money's gone. And it was like, this is really cool to see when A, you're solving a real problem, but B, you guys were both involved in the trade, in the space that you're actually trying to solve a problem for, which I think is a completely different perspective of maybe app building 10, 15 years ago and something completely different than the trades. And so I just wanted to say for what you guys are doing, it's really cool for me to see, because I've been on the other side of that in the earlier days of app building and seeing kind of the genesis of what the end game actually was. And look, no one wants to do anything for free. Everyone's trying to make money here. But it always seemed like, are we solving a problem? Are we building something just to sell it and it's going to be garbage, here in like 2 years? Because it really wasn't that, it was almost like we had too much technology and not enough great ideas. And I've seen that shift. And I think a lot of that has to do with what you guys do, both Luke and David. So I just wanted to, compliment you both. And for me, complimenting Luke's really hard. I'll take that rare
compliment.
Yeah, this is really hard for me to do, David. So I just want to let you know that I'm doing this through like gritting my teeth. But easy to compliment David, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, don't wait on the turn there, John. This ain't a two-way street, my friend. No.
So tell me about the beginning phases of Construction Clock. I mean, who did you start with? Were you by yourself at a table? Did you have somebody right away? Like you said, there's somebody in this city that can help me do this. Who did you start with, and how big was the team in the beginning?
I started with one tech guy I met at a tech event in Winnipeg. I started showing up to these tech events. I didn't even know these things existed, and brought one guy into my office. He was an Apple developer, so this thing started on Apple, and we launched it, and it was clunky, and then I would go around my city and convince trades to just use it for free and to commit to using it for a month. And we got about 100 companies in that first year by doing that, by saying use it completely for free. And then my small team, it ended up being 2 or 3 people that first year, were back at the office, kind of like dealing with all the issues, because you're dealing with people's time. It has to be perfect, and time is the same as money, especially for employees. If somebody's missing an hour, they're going to feel that. And so my team was back, making sure everyone's hours are perfect and tracking people entering and exiting jobs. And then that's basically how we got started. And the app was really clunky, and it was only for Apple. And so then people that would add their teams, if they had an employee that had Android, it didn't work for them. So, all the same challenges that probably Luke had at the start. But you need to have that. You need to have that really rough first year to get that feedback loop and to build a small customer base. And then from there, it started getting easier. I remember we got our first US customer, and it blew my mind. I called them. They were out of Wisconsin, and it was crazy to me that somebody in Wisconsin was using Construction Clock. And now we're in 7 different countries, and it's crazy to hear somebody in New Zealand using our app and having it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So cool.
We had a customer our first customer that I ever heard of in Israel. And I think I reached out to him because I was like, oh, that's cool. And they had some complaint, about the app in like Hebrew. And so I changed my phone to Hebrew. And I was like, oh my, because everything goes the other way. And I couldn't even figure out how to change it back. It was completely, I was like, this is a disaster. I don't even know how to get out of this. But then I remember looking at our app in Hebrew and everything going the opposite direction, all the text and everything, and it kind of just blowing my mind of like, this is someone's day. Like someone in Tel Aviv is opening this app. This is what they see. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Like it's a really cool feeling. But yeah, that's really cool, man.
That is cool.
Sorry, John, you asked the questions. I know.
I was going to say one of the things I think is cool about what we do when we have these is things that you've learned along the way, whether we were talking to Chris Cotty, grabbing another business after starting off in one section of the trades and expanding. And he talked about the pain points of how he manages people. What did you learn kind of along the way? Like Luke said, you're not thinking when you're 16, 17, hey, I'm going to be CEO and founder of a tech company. What are some things you learned along the way that if somebody was going to go do exactly what you did, with your background tomorrow, what advice would you give them?
I think the advice that I would give is, when I got super busy, I would just start hiring whoever I could find, and it didn't set us up for good company culture. You have people, you have A players, and A players typically just want to work with other A players. And so my reaction, I was just very reactionary. We're selling big jobs. We need to hire a bunch of people. You expand your team, and then you realize, oh, like these people aren't working well together. That was one thing I learned, is just being far more careful. Like the type of people that bring into your organization really change the culture of that organization and the chemistry. And so when I started Construction Clock, I protected that very closely, because I could see the difficulties of running my construction company, and like some of my supervisors having major issues with some of our employees, because they were just there just to get paid. And so now in tech, it's easier to hire A players, because they typically, on the technology side, developers, they're very passionate about what they do. I could never be a developer because it's just mind-numbing work at times. And so they're quite passionate, and they just love being part of a team. And so I've been very selective to who I hire, and it's okay to have a smaller team. And I think in construction, that's the case too. I've seen there's a number of companies that I know on the siding guy. It looked like for a couple of years, he was just working by himself, or maybe he had one helper. And it's like, you don't need to be a large organization. And oftentimes it's better to be a little bit smaller.
His story was cool in that he actually like scaled up at one point pretty, I don't know, pretty big. Maybe had 10 crews. Like
yeah.
And then he realized, like, I don't like this. I like the work, and I'm really good at it, and I can do really well just doing the work, and my life is way simpler. And it was really interesting. Most people are always like, how do I get more, bigger, better? And he was kind of like, had this sort of life balance, time priority, quality of work, quality of life story that was really compelling. But like hiring, I think you do. Well, it's obviously super crucial. I mean, sometimes you make mistakes. You end up on a podcast with them. It's like, ugh. I think that was a genuine laugh from John, because he knows it's coming. But
that was a good one. That was great. We can fix this problem right now. I resign. No, I'm just kidding.
See you later. Turn around and punch that clock on your wall. It shatters.
John quit during the podcast. Wild stuff today, guys. Wild.
But like, sorry. To the actual point. Sorry, John. Is I feel like I kind of like lucked into like, not completely. It's like, you know. I know what he's about to say. Let me preface what he's about to say. It's impossible for him to have, and I'm not saying he didn't have help, and I'm not saying he did it all on his own, but he loves to say he lucked into building a great company culture. I've worked at bad company cultures. I've worked at mediocre ones. And Company Cam, not to toot our own horn, like, it's legitimate. It's not like, hi, come work here. We have a great ping pong table. It is a legitimate, great company culture, and he loves to be like, well, I kind of lucked into this. I don't know what I was doing. Well, you luck into some good people at steamrolls. Just
happenstance. You know?
I'm a genius. We've been over this. Oh, hey, on that note, we're getting cold brew in the office. I'm calling it right here. Yeah, yes. Where are you at, John? You're in your freaking basement, dude. Basement dwelling. You could be in the office.
Well, when the cold brew machine is there, I'll show up. How about that? That's culture. That's culture.
Exactly. So it's not ping pong. It has moved to just caffeine. And since I haven't referenced any dictators yet on this podcast, John, I should say that when I was trying to sell this idea, I can't remember who I was selling it to. I think the analogy I used was like, let me run a historical counterfactual for you. Do you think Hitler is marauding through the Soviet Union if those soldiers are not on meth? No. We need cold brew in this office. Get it going. Make it happen.
Oh my God. See,
put that on social media, John.
I can't wait to edit this out. Anyway,
you should make it the. You should make it.
It'll be in the bloopers, is what it'll be.
The bloopers.
Yeah.
John, good content punches you in the face, John. And what are you doing? You're hitting delete, or you're hitting cut in final, not Final Cut.
Da
What's
Vinci.
that? Yeah, no,
Resolve.
Da Vinci Resolve.
Yeah.
Oh
Anyway.
man, you wouldn't know a Michelangelo if it slapped you, dude. Okay, we're back. Sorry, David. You had to be here for this.
Yeah, this is family business. Sorry,
this
you had
is
to
the
see
Good
that.
Contractor Podcast.
Yeah.
And contractor to tech. You talked about things that transfer. I'm interested in what was the hardest thing that was different? And you had said talking to the customer, because in construction, you're like, look, I don't need it. I'm not asking this person how I should do this wall or anything. You want to kind of get out of them what their vision is and stuff. But then it's not like every day you're soliciting feedback constantly. I don't know. Maybe that would work. That was one thing you called out. But are any other things that stand out to you that you're like, oh, this is just, I don't know. Either something that's you thought was going to feel very different and wasn't, or something that you just took for granted as this is business, and then you realized, oh, it's different over here that it is over here. You can go either way, but it's kind of just mismatched expectations in one direction or the other.
I think I tried to run a tech company too much like a construction company at the beginning. So I would do things like, hey, I need you guys here at if we're starting at 9 a.m., you guys got to show up at 8:55. And I was so particular about just in construction, it's all about production and getting work done because you got so many hours in a day. And I ran my tech company at the beginning very much like I'd run a construction company, and it's not like that. It's very different, and it's that you need a lot of collaboration and you need a lot of communication. And in construction, it's very much about just hey, you need that, but then you also need to get work done. I don't know if that's what you were asking, Luke.
I think I know what you mean, but it's you've got to set this whole standard of time and on taskness that because a lot of it is just you're just doing the thing. I gotta frame this wall, and you got to think. It's not that you don't have to think, but when you're writing code or when you're building something, it's a lot more sort of dynamic, and you're figuring it out as you go. And that kind of a regimented style, maybe that would work at a huge corporation or something. But it's when you're starting out and you're trying to figure it out, it does that regimentation isn't exactly what you need. You need the deep collaboration and creativity and that thing going, which isn't always from the regimentation.
And I wonder if I could go back and run a construction company again, if I could treat it more like the way I treat our teams now, if that would create better output. In construction crews, there's typically there's ego and just being a tough person and getting stuff done. And I kind of led that way where it was you gotta get stuff done at all costs. And I would love to see now, going back, if I could treat a construction company with strong collaboration and communication, if that would be actually more beneficial. I think in the long term it would be, and be interesting to test.
Yeah, that would be. Let me ask you a question. So you've done construction, you're in tech. You could have probably found pain points, I don't know, in any industry for any job. Why was it important to you to build an app for the trades? Why not build something for another industry for you?
I think for me, I think a lot of tradespeople, I don't know the world outside of trades. That's the world I live in. I don't know anything about property management, or I'm thinking about some of the customers that we have that use our software that are not in construction. And I would have never known how to even find those pain points, or that the fact that they had these pain points. I knew one industry, it was construction. I knew the customer persona, which was, I'm the customer. Let's build stuff that I would use. And that's why I'm a construction guy. It's as simple as that, John. I don't know anything else outside of construction. And I have a feeling like a lot of tradespeople, if you're a mechanic, you know a lot about vehicles, but you don't know anything about building a house. And so I stay in my lane. This is the lane I know.
Yeah. You brought up the siding guy, and as you're moving from construction into the tech industry, the overlap is kind of the influencers and the people that are out there right now. Other than Luke, who are some of your favorite people, out there that are creating content about the trades and that you've either learned from, or you still are watching, or you're following, or big fans of? Like, who's on David Peters' list?
I think early on, watching Kyle at our builders, and the fact that I would message him and he would actually message me back kind of blew me away. And so he's been at the top of my list for a long time. And then Matt Reisinger, I learned a lot from him. I was doing renovations. They kind of explained things really well. Those two guys have been huge for me, I would say, and they've blown up in the influencer world for good reason, because they did a really good job of just sharing all the secrets when nobody really wants to share the secrets. So for me, that was huge, and the fact that they replied to me, it was crazy. Like, I'm a guy with 1,000 followers on Instagram, and these guys are communicating with me while they're busy on a roof working.
That's great. That's really cool. Well, we always let Luke vote on if you're a good contractor, and since you're both a contractor and a CEO, we'll let Luke vote on both. I hope this goes well, Luke. Oh, whoa.
Joking.
You got it. All right.
No.
Two thumbs up for David.
I don't know the first thing about cottages. They could have all been flattened by Hurricane Beryl. Like, who even knows? Maybe everyone's dead that lived in these. So I can't speak to that.
Luke, no.
We can do a skills competition, Luke, you versus me.
Oh, okay. That's actually, it's funny you say that, because like usually I'm like getting challenged by one of our like capri wearing social media people. Aiden not here to defend himself.
Capri wearing.
I saw
capri wearing.
I saw you at the roofing expo when you went and lifted that weight. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. No, I forgot the time I deadlifted 500 pounds at the International Roofing Expo, David. Of course I remember that. I tell everyone.
That was cute. That was a
cute. Oh, okay. Well, I see where this is going. Wow.
I love how this podcast is ending. This is my favorite.
Yeah. It's like, who can out macho the dude? No, but these games, like these, like, like you're hammering a nail with like a ball pin. I don't even know how you say it. Whatever. The one with like a semi-spherical head on it. That makes it hard to hit the nail in.
Spoken like a true tech CEO. Keep going.
Yeah,
Luke.
no one uses that hammer. That's like a make-believe tool for making dresses or like clogs or something. Okay.
You're talking the hammer from the bar stools guy that was trying to put in that post. Do you remember that? It went viral.
Okay, I deliberately didn't watch that video because I'm like, I don't even want to see. This is gonna aggravate me. This is gonna be embarrassing. But yeah, the watching someone like try to hammer as if they're like gently ringing the doorbell or something, or like knocking on the door. It's just not the play. And yeah, we set up shop out in front of our office the other day, and we're having people like guess which, or try to identify which tools are which or whatever. And man, I got one wrong. I think I grabbed the wrong wrench when they said like I don't even know what they're called anymore. I don't use wrenches. You don't use wrenches on a roof, okay? You use a hammer, a nail gun, and a whole lot of sweat. But
yes.
No, we should. Yes. I do think that idea of construction tech CEOs seeing who has the construction shops is just a good social media idea.
I agree. I think this is good for Construction Clock. This is good for Company Cam. Luke, David, I'm writing this down right now. I think this is a good idea. Okay, last but not least, we asked everybody, David, in your mind, if you were going to describe what it is to be a good contractor, what would you say?
Good contractor. A good contractor, knows when to say no.
That's a good one. I like that one.
I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not, but
no, that is a good answer. In fact, I can't remember somebody. It's been a while since I heard that, but it was like a year and a half ago. We were asking somebody, and somebody was saying that is a big problem. Is not saying no to certain jobs, certain customers, etc.
I heard that once, and I heard if you're saying yes to one person, you're saying no to another, and I feel like you want to be a help to everybody, and sometimes you take on too much work, and I'm guilty of this. And sometimes I've said yes to too many things, and then I've hurt my existing customers because of it. So knowing when to say no, knowing when you're too busy, and taking time for your family, I think that's huge.
That might be the best answer we've gotten. I mean, there's a lot of like being honest, which is that stuff's really important. But that, like, man, that's killer. Yeah. That you think of so many problems that people have. This guy's not showing up on time. Why didn't they come today? They must have went somewhere else. Like, almost all of that is like from an inability to say no to a thing that you need to say no to, so that you can say yes. That's really good. I'm going to hold on to that. Well, hey, David, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for the time. We had a blast having you on, and hope to talk and see you again real soon, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.